Hey guys, how's it going? Value Venture Investing here today. So today we're going to be talking about Virgin Galactic Space, SPCE. They just reported their Q1 2023 earnings. And of course, there's been big news lately. We can get into this right away. I'm sure that you're aware. The two big things that happened on April 26th, they completed a successful glide flight above Spaceport America. So they went up really high, they let it glide down. They expected this to be successful, but there's been a lot of delays on this, in the past, of course. And the bigger news, I think this came out like day before yesterday. Commercial service is to start later this quarter. Money, right? To finally get that. So we're going to get in this video, we're going to get into when that's actually going to occur. I'm going to talk about that. We're going to go through their financials really quick. And then at the very end, if you're interested, I'll go a little bit deeper of a dive into their financials. Looking at the stock today, it was pretty much flat. I think a couple days ago, it was up like 11% on this news, some pretty big jump. I waited because I knew earnings were going to come up in order to talk about this. After hours, it's down about, as of recording this, 2.5%, somewhere around there. I think I know why, kind of sell the news type of thing, but also there's a couple other reasons as well. So let's talk about it here. Q2, Q3, and Q4 2022. So I went in order. I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing more revenue and we can just lay it out and see it grow. Of course, Q1 right here is the quarter that we're talking about. They had $392,000 in revenue. We're going to talk about where that came from. Of course, this is in thousands. On a year-over-year basis, that's pretty close. I think it's up slightly, down from the last two quarters, pretty similar to Q2 2021, or 2022 rather. Net income was a loss of about $156 million. Of course, this is going to remain to be seen when they're spending so much money. It's been pretty in line. It was about $147 million last quarter, $146 million before that. And cash has dropped a little bit. They've actually issued some equity in order to keep those cash reserves up. Still quite a bit of money, $874 million. It was getting closer to $1 billion last quarter, and it was actually over $1 billion before there. But still pretty strong cash balance. Also, during the conference call, these are some things that came out. I only had two things that were really kind of significant. It was pretty short, actually. Talking about cancellations of customer deposits, it's been minimal. There wasn't really any questions asked about that too. Well, there was, but they didn't really answer too much. So not too much information on that, but I don't think we're really concerned with that. We're more concerned with, are we going to get this revenue generating flights going on here, right? Also talking about opening sales. The sales are still closed. They're going to be opening back up after they start flying, and presumably this is after they start flying the private customers. So let's go through the presentation right now. As usual, they give a pretty nice little PDF document here going through it. This is pretty short, this one, but there's some good information on it. Of course, they have the agenda where they talk about what's going to happen. The commercial space line operations will be the first one where they talk about, then the future fleet development, they always talk about that. And then the financial overview, but we're going to skip that because we're going to go into the actual financials a bit more. During the commercial space line operations, they call this Unity 24. This was a successful glide flight. Of course, we talked about this already. This was on April 26th. They completed the final validation test and they cleared the path to return to space. So that was sort of like their first step, right? The next thing coming up here, they're calling Unity 25. Of course, they're using the Unity spacecraft and the Eve mothership. This is scheduled for late May. So we're in May. So this is why this is exciting. And this is why the stock had gone so much up the other day. 2 pilots and 4 Virgin Galactic mission specialists. So this will be the final assessment, basically before they actually do their first commercial flight. They're going to be testing ground-based training, space flight, and overall customer experience. And then the Galactic 01, this is the next one. This is the first commercial space flight. Now, this is the one part I find a little bit disappointing because this is going to be a scientific research flight with the members of the Italian Air Force. So again, I'm not expecting that much revenue for this because we've seen this in the past and they haven't really generated that much revenue. I think maybe that's why the stock's down a little bit. And this is planned for late June. Of course, very close. Then they're talking about Galactic 02 or Galactic 2, I think they called it, and beyond. This is going to be civilian astronauts and research customers flying to space on regular intervals. But the thing with this is they didn't really specify when exactly. So late June is going to be their first commercial one, which I don't anticipate a lot of revenue, but how much longer after that are we actually going to see the customers go up? And that's a big question I have. Perhaps I missed that. I'd love to know if you guys got any more information on that you could leave down in the comment section below. But yeah, so that's something is very exciting that we're so close. Late June, we're actually going to be getting some revenue, but I don't anticipate it being that much. Here they talk about the commercial space line operation. Of course, on the far left here, the recurring flights of VMS Eve and VSS Unity. So we're in the amongst of this right now. We're talking about what's going on with that. Of course, they're always talking about their next generation spacecraft, which is very important, yes, but I'd like to see them get going on this one first. That's a Delta spacecraft development. So they're saying in 2024, the assembly phase for the Delta class is to begin, and then 2026, the first commercial flight for Delta will actually happen. They also talked about the Phoenix, Arizona facility that's going to support in the development of the Delta class, and that's going to become operational in 2024, they said. So that's something that's going to really help bring those costs down, and we're going to get into that in a couple slides here where we have some interesting information on that as well. A quick overview of the first quarter 2023 results. So of course we had revenue of $392,000. This is compared to $319,000, so it's actually quite a bit more than the comparable quarter in a year ago. This is mainly generated by future astronaut fees. Operating expenses, of course, were up quite significantly, and this is primarily driven by higher R&D expenses related to the development of the fleet and enhancements of the current fleet. Definitely expected. They said net loss of $159 million, but I'm looking through their financials. I saw $156 million. Comment down below if I missed something there. So this is compared to $93 million in the prior year period. Of course, this is primarily just due to them ramping up here. The very bottom note here as well, they talked about this last quarter about diluting. They said they would do it as needed. So of course, they raised $32 million in gross proceeds as they issued another 5.8 million shares of common stock. Of course, as you guys know, it's not usually something that I like, but when a company's in growth mode, well, that's what's going to happen. Next, they talk about their cash flow. They like to talk about their cash flow quite a bit. The free cash flow for the first quarter of this year was a loss of $139 million. The guidance for Q2 2023 is supposed to be 130 to 140, and then Q3 and Q4 expected to be 120 and 130. So we're kind of at the point right now, hopefully, where we're at the top end of this cash burn in terms of free cash flow. There's some questions about that. So they're going to be bringing those costs down, and I hope to see that going forward. We're going to get into that a little bit right now. Of course, they have a little thing on the right here about their cash and cash equivalents. Again, $874 million. It was $980 million on the year ago quarter. Now, this next slide, this is the first time I've seen them kind of get into the financials, the cost a little bit more. This is talking about the Delta class, the economic engine. So they expect about $2.7 million of revenue per flight. So there's six seats, at $450,000 per seat. They expect the cost to be around $400,000 variable operating cost per flight. That's of course the rocket, the Delta rocket motor, the fuel for Eve, the mothership, and the training and the hospitality costs for the astronauts. I don't know exactly what that's going to be. There's not too much information on that. Then they go into how they're going to be reducing their costs on the right here. The cost to build each incremental Delta class ship. They're expecting $50 to $60 million, which is quite low. They expect 500 or approximately flights for the useful life of each ship. I'm not too sure what happens after that. They think they're going to be done. They're not reusable after that. Comment down below if you know more about that. So they're expecting $500. So about $100,000 to $120,000 is the approximate amortized cost for the Delta ship per flight. So they're saying in about 6 months is going to be the approximate payback period for each Delta class ship. So this gives them about 75% of the contribution margin per flight. So this is something that kind of shows how profitable that they can actually become if this actually comes to fruition. It's actually nice to see some information on this as well. I got more excited about seeing $2.7 million per flight, and then looking at how much it actually costs per flight. They could make some good money if they had enough demand here. Now looking into the actual financials, we're going to go through this pretty quick. There's not a hell of a lot here that's super interesting, but of course, like we said here on the balance sheet, revenue is $392,000. versus $319 a year ago. Customer experience has gone up quite significantly. I've talked about this quite a bit. I don't know what exactly that entails. I'm surprised that a lot of people don't actually ask about this on the conference call, but it was $318,000 for this quarter. It was only $25,000 the year ago. So their total operating expenses were up significantly, $163 million versus $91 million a year ago. So this gives them a total comprehensive loss of $156 million versus $98 million a year ago. Balance sheet, again, I just talk about cash and cash equivalents, the restricted cash, marketable securities short, and marketable securities long. They don't have any marketable securities long term, but this is how they come up with their cash. If you want to pause it here and take a look at how it compares year over year in each of the respective segments. In terms of the statement of cash flows, nothing too out of the ordinary here either. I talk about this like my last video I did on Apple here. I talk about the purchases of marketable securities. I almost look at it as like a proxy for the market as a whole, wondering what's going on. Of course, that's probably a pretty flawed way of looking at it, but they purchased a lot less, $83 million at this time frame versus in 2022. They had a huge, over 204 million, which is probably a good thing for a company. That they shouldn't probably be investing too much when they should be investing more on their core competencies. Again, the proceeds from the issuance of common stock there was $32 million that they made. So there's the exact number, $32 million and $44,000 is what the proceeds were for the stocks that they issued. So overall, quarter was pretty much what we expected. I feel like I've been saying this quite a bit with Virgin Galactic. What's going to be the driver of the stock? What is going to be the driver? The driver is going to be whether we're generating that revenue. After that Italian Air Force flight that's going to be generating revenue, how soon after are we going to get that? That's what I need to know. Everything else is pretty much in line, and so it's good to know that we're actually not being delayed again, because there's been so many delays in the past. So that's what's been kind of positive for the stock. So we really don't have that long to figure out. Within the next couple months, hopefully we should have an idea of the trajectory that the stock is going to go, because it's been kind of range bound even from my last video. Love to know you guys' thoughts. Do you think really soon in June they're going to be doing commercial space flights for civilians? You think it's going to be longer? I'd love to know what you guys think. As always, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.